Hello and welcome. Now, when most people think of the Brontes, they picture Haworth, the parsonage, the moors, the novels, but the Bronte story actually starts somewhere else. Right here in Thornton, in this little house where Charlotte, Branwell, Emily and Anne were all born. Back in October, I happened to be passing while the renovations were going on, so I kind of did what any curious Bronte fan would do, and I asked the builders if I could just have a quick look round. And luckily, they said yes. And just recently, I was lucky enough to go back and see how far it had come. I had the whole place to myself to film, explore, and take it all in, and I can't wait to show you all around. Sneaking in and coming back. This October just gone, October 2024, while I was visiting Patrick's old Bell Chapel in Thornton, I took a stroll down to the Bronte Birthplace. The door was wide open and I found myself chatting with the builders working inside. The house was still mid-renovated and they were removing the old cafe and the modern decor to restore it back to how it would have been in the Brontes' time. I asked ever so cheekily if I could have a little look around, and to my delight they said yes. So I got to film and explore this incredible space before it was even finished. Fast forward to just after the Bronte retreat earlier this month, and I went back to see the house properly. Now the renovations are complete and it's open to the public. This time I was warmly welcomed by Anna Gibson, the general manager, who knows so much about the history of the house itself, including some before and after shots to compare, plus a few old photos of Thornton itself. When the Brontes lived here. Let me give you some background on the Brontes' time in the house and why it is so important. In May 1815, Patrick Bronte moved here to Thornton with his wife Maria and their two very young daughters, Maria and Elizabeth. The girls were just babies. Maria was about a year old and Elizabeth had only been born a few months before in February. Before this, the family had lived in Hartshead where Patrick was a curate, but the position didn't include a home. Moving to Thornton meant they finally had a house to call their own, as the role here was a perpetual curate with a tied house. Thornton itself was a busy village at the time, full of life and industry, very different from the quiet moors many people associate with the Brontes. Patrick would have been deeply involved in the community, attending to the spiritual and practical needs of his much larger parish, and the income from the living was considerably better, around £140 a year, which was a good wage back then. The house itself must have been quite full with a growing family. Charlotte was born here in April 1816, followed by Branwell in June 1817, Emily in July 1818, and then seems their mother had a little break before having Anne in January 1820. That means all 6 Bronte children spent their early years within these walls playing, learning and growing up together. Living in Thornton gave the family a stable home, but by the late 1820s, Patrick was offered another perpetual curate position, but in Haworth. This new role came with its own parsonage, a larger house that could be better accommodating the extending family. The move to Haworth marked a new chapter for the Brontes, but this little house in Thornton was where their story truly began. What the house would have been like. So, what was the Bronte birthplace actually like when the family lived here? Well, this was a modest terraced house on Market Street, which back then was the main road in and out of Thornton. It might not seem very grand to us now, but for a young clergyman's family in the early 1800s, it would have felt fairly generous. There were 3 rooms downstairs, a parlour at the front, a family sitting room or a dining room in the middle, and the kitchen at the back. Beneath that was a very small cellar, which was known to be a bit damp, with water running down from the hill behind the house. Upstairs there were just 2 bedrooms, which had to fit a growing family. Eventually 6 children and 2 adults, plus the occasional visitor. And of course a servant would have slept in the attic, as was typical for a house of that kind. The room at the front of the house where the big butcher's shop window was later installed wouldn't have been as open to the streets as it is today. That large glass window was added much later when the property became a commercial space. In the Brontes' time, it would have been a private and domestic room with a normal window and shutters, much more enclosed and sheltered from passerbys. Now, something that often sparks discussion among Bronte enthusiasts is the fact that the children were likely born downstairs rather than one of the bedrooms. This has been known and talked about for years, but it's always raised questions. Why downstairs? When I visited, Anne Gibson, the general manager, offered a very practical explanation. The downstairs front room was warmer, close to the fire, and had easier access to water, and the shutters would be closed for privacy. Her insight really helped bring that decision into clear focus. And outside the front door, the world would have been busy. Market Street was the main thoroughfare, bustling with carts, horses, people going about their business, and all the noise and mess that came with it. The streets were cobbled, just like it is now, and you'd have heard the rumbling of cartwheels and hooves throughout the day. It's not hard to imagine the Bronte children hearing that sound from the upper rooms as they drifted off to sleep. Thornton in the Brontes' day. So what was Thornton like when the Brontes lived here? Well, in those early 1800s, Thornton was still very much a village. You were surrounded by Yorkshire hills and open countryside, not the industrial sprawl people might picture today. The mills were starting to appear, but it was still a fairly quiet place, with a mix of small shops, local traders and a handful of middle-class families. Most of the households, though, were working class, earning their living through hard physical work. Patrick, being the local curate, would have known many of them. His role meant he was out and about visiting parishioners, preaching and supporting people through baptism, marriage and burials, so he'd have had a clear picture of village life. And even though the Bronte children were still very young while they lived here, they wouldn't have been completely sheltered from that world. Stories would have filtered through the household, especially through someone like Nancy Gars, who worked as a servant for the family here in Thornton. These early experiences, however small they might have seemed at the time, were part of the world the Brontes were born into. The house through the years. After the Brontes moved to Haworth, the house here in Thornton began a new life of its own. It didn't stay a quiet family home for long. In fact, over the years, it's had all sorts of different uses. Sometime in the 19th century, it became a butcher shop, and that was when the front window was added. You can imagine joints of meat hanging there, drawing the attention of passers-by on Market Street. Quite a contrast to the quiet and domestic life the Brontes would have known inside. Since those days, the house has been used in a variety of ways. Most recently, many people will remember it as Emily, a cafe that was popular with locals and Bronte fans alike. Part of the building then did reflect its literary past, but of course it also had to function as a working cafe, with modern kitchens, seating areas and bright lights, which meant it looked and felt quite different from how it would have been in the Brontes' time. After the cafe closed, the building stood empty for a while. It started to feel a little bit neglected, and it wasn't hard to imagine it slipping into a permanent disuse. But thanks to recent work and care, it's now found a new purpose, but not as a living home, but as a space made to look and feel as close as possible to how it might have been when the Brontes were there. You get a real sense of a domestic life in the 1800s. Today, it's a community space as well as a heritage home. There are also plans for a small coffee shop area, so eventually you'll be able to browse the house, take in the history, and then enjoy a quiet brew in the very room where the Bronte sisters were born. I mean, what a lovely way to connect past and present and keep this special building full of life. Saving and restoring the birthplace. For a long time, it felt like the Bronte Birthplace might quietly slip away, just another historic building lost to time. But luckily, in 2022, something brilliant happened. Local people came together with a shared goal to save this house and turn it into something the whole community could be proud of. A proper campaign was launched and it quickly gathered momentum. Volunteers, local businesses and Bronte lovers from near and far all pitched in. Then, in 2023, a new community benefit society, Bronte Birthplace Limited, was formed to take the work forward. Thanks to the incredible energy and determination of those involved, over 700 people invested in the project, and they secured major funding too, including £650,000 in grants. It's all thanks to that passion and effort that we are now able to step inside the house today, to walk through the rooms where the Brontes once lived, played and read as children. And for people like me who've cared about this building for years, it's such a joy just to be able to see it up close. I even put a little money in myself when they were raising funds. Nothing huge, just a small investment from my YouTube channel. But every little bit helped, and it's a lovely feeling to think that maybe one of those freshly painted spindles on the stairs is there, in part, because of that. It really does feel like something we've all helped build, and now it belongs to everyone. What's it becoming today? The Bronte Birthplace has been transformed into a cultural and educational space. Downstairs is going to be the tea room and event area, perfect for enjoying a brew in the very room where the sisters were born. And upstairs, the 3 bedrooms are being restored to reflect how they would have looked in the Brontes' day, and soon you'll be able to stay in them. When I visited recently, the upstairs room weren't quite ready for guests yet, but they're getting close. I mean, it's really exciting to think that very soon people will be able to sleep there. So there are 3 rooms upstairs. The first one is Charlotte's room. This room would originally have been shared by all the children, but now it's been furnished with a large 4-poster bed and comfortable period-style furniture, with lovely finishing touches that really bring the era to life. And the second room is Emily's room. This was actually Patrick and Mariah's bedroom when the family lived here. Now, like all the rooms, it has an ensuite bathroom. I mean, can you imagine what the Brontes would have made of not only flushing toilets, but having one upstairs and inside your actual bedroom? So there is a third room, but I can't remember the name. I was a little bit overexcited by this point, and I was finding it very difficult to listen and pay attention. But anyway, this room has a window on two sides, making it a perfect spot for people watching. This extension was added after the Brontes lived here, so when the family were here, it would have only been the 2 bedrooms. Just off the kitchen, there's a narrow doorway that leads up to what would have been the servants' room, where Nancy Garr is believed to have slept. The stone stairs take you up into the attic space above the kitchen, and I couldn't help but imagine how many times Nancy must have climbed them day in and day out, looking after the family. The room's now been set up to show the kind of toys the Bronte children might have played with during their early years, and I'll be honest, I had a bit of a moment up there. I was being nosy, as usual, and opened one of those cupboard doors, and it felt like someone poked me in the eye, and I jumped out of my skin. Honestly, it was like I was being told off by someone. Make of it what you will. At the top of the stairs, there's another door that would have led once straight into the children's room, which of course is now Charlotte's room. It makes sense, really. It would have meant that Nancy could have checked on the children without needing to go all the way back down and up the main staircase. And before we head out to the attic, I just want to show you this wall. It's not perfectly smooth or finished, and that's what I love about it. All those lumps and bumps, the uneven surface. I mean, it's just full of history. And just along here, I spotted something in the plaster. To me, it looks like the outline of a face. Can you see it too? Why this matters. What makes this place so special is that it shows us a side of the Bronte story we don't often stop to think about. Their very beginning. This little house in Thornton is where the family first came together, long before the moors and the novels and the fame. It's where 6 children lived under one roof, even if only for a short while. It's where Charlotte, Branwell, Emily and Anne all took their first breath. Visiting this house gives us a glimpse into their early days, grounding the Brontes not just as literary figures, but as a real family in a real place. Seeing it restored not just as a vibrant community space where people come together, learn and connect, really brings their story alive in a way that feels very personal and meaningful. So for those of us who love the Brontes, being able to step inside the very rooms where it all began is truly something special. It's a reminder that every great story has a humble start, and this home is exactly that, the starting point of a family whose influence still echoes today. It takes a village. Before you head over for a visit, make sure to check out the opening times. It's still very early days for the Bronte Birthplace and it's not open all the time yet. If you'd like to support this amazing place, think about making a donation, or if you're local, maybe consider volunteering. When I was there, someone from the village knocked on the door just to ask about joining the volunteer team. I mean, it's wonderful to see how much the whole community is behind this project. Thank you again for watching. If you like this video, please do that whole likey, subscribey thing because it really does help me out and it lets YouTube know that we want to watch more Bronte content. Have a good weekend and take care, and I will see you all the Friday after next for more Bronte adventures. Bye!